Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new real-life car review. Thanks for tuning in again. I said new real-life car review, but this is the Suzuki Swift and this car has been featured before on the channel. In fact, that video gained a lot of views. It was one of the best watched real-life car reviews so far. It gained a lot of positive feedback from people who bought the car after watching the review. A lot of people who were already fan of the brand and telling us how much they like the Suzuki Swift, but there also was one question asked multiple times, and that question was, what is the automatic version like to drive? So I reached out to Suzuki, asked if I could drive the Swift CVT, and they said, well, we don't have one in our press fleet, but we'll make arrangements for you so you can drive a dealer demo for a week. So thanks to Suzuki, I can drive this car and tell you all about the Suzuki Swift CVT. Now, since I have already done an in-depth detail on the engine technology, the interior cargo space, all the regular stuff in a real-life car review, I will skip that for this real-life car review and focus on the automatic transmission and the differences in, well, fuel economy, handling and performance. So without any further ado, let's open up the hood and I'll tell you some things you need to know about the CVT transmission. Now let's discuss some brochure numbers first before I talk about the details of the CVT transmission. The CVT costs 2,800 euros extra. It only adds 38 kilos to the vehicle weight. The vehicle weight of this car is 1,032 kilos, which is still super light. And if you have the Swift with all-grip all-wheel drive system, that doesn't even add 100 kilos in comparison to the standard Swift. So Suzuki is real good at building light vehicles. I don't know much about this transmission yet. I reached out to Suzuki to fill me in on that. I haven't heard back from them, but I did some research and found some very interesting things about the CVT transmission. And the first thing that's important to know is that it has a torque converter instead of a clutch in there. Some CVTs use a dry clutch. This one has a torque converter. It is a steel belt push belt CVT system, well, which is pretty common in this kind of vehicles, in this vehicle class. But also there's a planetary gear set, and that planetary gear set is used to reduce the engine speed at constant driving speed and when you're on highway speed. I didn't know that. I didn't notice anything of it because it works very smooth and very seamless. But for highway speeds, there is an extra step where the planetary gear set shifts, which you don't notice, to bring the engine revs down. If you look at the numbers themselves, this version with CVT is the faster car, not only in terms of acceleration but also top speed. The top speed for the CVT is 170 kilometers an hour against 165 for the manual version, and also the acceleration time is a little bit better. This is the better performing car in theory, but you can also tell during driving that this car is quicker and faster, but I'll explain that in the drive segment. And also the question is, how about fuel economy? Well, let's find out in the drive segment. I'll hop into the interior and show you the differences between the manual transmission version and this CVT version first. So the interior of the Swift, well, it isn't much different. There's always one thing that I have to get used to, and that's the extended roof and the small steep windscreen. One thing that you have to keep in mind when you're sitting in front of the line by the traffic lights and you have overhead traffic lights, you really have to lean forward to see what the traffic lights are saying. Anyway, this shape, this roof line is so characteristic to the Swift that I wouldn't have it any other way. That's just something that you have to keep in mind. So looking at the interior, I'm sitting in the top of the range trim level where you get this hexagonal shapes in plastic and this satin details that are minor details. You have a lot of options for the Swift, especially in the exterior package. In the interior not so much, but this is what the top of the range trim level looks like with a leather steering wheel. And every version, every trim level has a telescoping and tilting steering wheel that comes as standard. Climate control comes with the top of the range trim level, as are these white plastic which brighten up the interior quite nicely. And as you can see, the headliner and the A-pillars are ivory white, so that really brightens up this interior. Okay, the Differences between the manual and the automatic versions are this: of course you get a different gear shift lever, a normal automatic shift lever. It does not have any drive modes in terms of sport, comfort or winter. This is what it is. It also does not have a B setting for more engine braking that some automatic transmissions have. But if you flick it into the M for manual mode, you can use the flappy pedals behind the steering wheel, and then you can flick down a gear. These aren't really fixed gear ratios like some other CVTs have. They have a bandwidth of plus minus 500 RPM. So I wanted to show you how to switch off the overspeed warning. You have these two stalks in the instrument panel. You hold down the right one for, I believe, 3 seconds, and there we are. You can click it left and right. You go to TSR, traffic sign recognition, push it again and then click it down, and as soon as that icon appears in the top left corner, the system is switched off. When I would now start driving the car, this display goes back to its normal board computer function. And this has a lot of function, this little board computer. I've showed it before, but I think it's nice to show. So here we have the hybrid monitor. Then you can show the speed. These are navigation instructions. And this is for the driver aid systems. Fuel economy, as you can see, is already good. There's a lot of functions in the fuel consumption monitor. Driving time, it shows the idle time. So this is for the start-stop system. And then this is fun. This is the G-force meter. And this will make sense once you go drive this car because it handles real well. There's a torque and power monitor, acceleration and brake monitor, and then we're back to the hybrid monitor. Only thing that's missing, which I would think, is an oil temperature gauge. And there is one other thing that I need to point out, and that's the lane departure warning. In older Suzukis you could switch it off and it would remain switched off until you as a driver put it on. Thanks to new legislation, this automatically reactivates each time you start a car. So these are the most important differences between the manual version and the CVT version. And I think it's time to go on a drive so I can show you the difference in handling, driving and fuel economy. Okay folks, we're on our way in the Suzuki Swift CVT, and I just did some driving shots. Fuel economy dropped to 90 liters per 100 kilometers. So we will see where we end up in this driving segment. I will do my normal test route. So first, the first impressions. First impressions are that this is a light car, even for modern day standards. With just over 1,000 kilos, this is a true lightweight, and I believe that it is even lighter than the very first generation of the Suzuki Swift, which is an amazing feat of engineering. You would expect a light car to have a bumpy ride because there is little mass to counteract the unevenness in the road, but Suzuki has always done a great job in setting up the suspension, not just for comfort and dynamics. You can tell the ride is a little bit bumpy. There is some tire noise on the lower driving speeds. These are Yokohama tires, which I am very happy with, I must say. There is a little bit of tire noise, there is some surround noises, there is not much noise insulation, so that's also what keeps the car light. And it is noticeable, but it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just something that I notice about this car. When highway driving, you can hear a little bit of wind noise on the A-pillars, but we'll see that later in this drive segment. So these are the first takeaways. If you've seen my previous review on the Suzuki Swift, you will know that I was very surprised by the way this car handles. And with the CVT, it's basically unchanged. Yes, the car is just slightly heavier, but in terms of suspension, ride and handling, there are no differences. So speed bump, going up, going down, and the car is saddled. Yeah, I will be driving a little bit faster than I usually do because this car is just so much fun to drive. But If there is one downside to the lightweight of this car, it's this, and that's something that I noticed last week when I picked up this car. It was quite a windy day, at times it was even stormy, and when you have the wind blowing exactly to the side of the car, so perpendicular to the road, you can tell that it affects the straight line stability of the car. I never experienced that prior to this, not in the Suzuki Swift at least. It's very simple to solve. You get the car under cruise control, you have the lane centering assist, that's this little button on the steering wheel, you flick it once and the auto steer or the steer help is activated, and that straightens out the car quite a bit. And that brings me to my next talking point, which is the adaptive cruise control. The previous generation of the Suzuki Swift was the cheapest car you could get with adaptive cruise control, and that system was one of the better, if not the best, adaptive cruise control that I've tested. A lot of manufacturers use a distance to set the following of the gap and the following distance, and that's a distance set in meters. And I know for a fact that Suzuki uses a time-based system, which basically boils down to the same principle. But the shortest following distance in a Suzuki is 1.8 seconds, and that feels very natural for human drivers. And because this of course is a computerized electronic system, it does not have the reaction time, the lag that humans have, so that 1.8 seconds it feels very natural for a driver, but it also offers the electronics enough response time to brake and keep the distance. And that's the one aspect that I really like about this adaptive cruise control. It was always one of the best in the Suzuki Swift, and it still is. Okay, here comes a nice curve. Let's build up some speed where I would normally slow down, because you toss it into a corner, and in other cars I would really be pushing the car, the tires and all, but not in the Swift. It's the old saying, this car steers like it's going on railroad tracks. The steering of this car is really second to none. It always puts a smile on my face. I always point out that I'm a calm driver. That's why I always get great fuel economy and such. But once I get in a Swift, I really want to enjoy the suspension and the steering of the car. It's an electronic power assist steering, so you have much less feedback than in the older hydraulic assisted systems. But oh man, this is such a joy to drive. So I'm going to brake a little bit, and I'm releasing the brake while I'm entering the corner, and normally that would cause a car to twitch a little bit, but not the Swift. The way this suspension and steering set up, man, it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic how this car handles and drives. Even with the 83 horsepower, you can have so much fun. I think if I would drive a car with 800 horsepower, I would not have the fun as I'm having currently in this car. This is just great. It's a fantastic driving car. It always puts a smile on my face. So until now I haven't discussed any major differences in driving between the manual transmission and the CVT. But there are important differences when you start driving the CVT version. As soon as you start driving, you can tell that this is the faster car. You accelerate, say I'm currently driving 50 kilometers an hour, want to go to 80, it's much faster. In my first test of the Swift, I pointed out that fifth gear is a bit long. It's usable from 80 kilometers an hour, but even above that speed, say at highway speed on 120 kilometers an hour, you want to overtake a truck or a slower vehicle, you always have to downshift. And the same is true for the back roads. If you want to build up speed, you always have to downshift a little bit, and you don't have that with the CVT transmission. You just push the throttle, you have to push it a little bit, the engine builds up rev, gear ratio changes, and there you're going, building up speed. Now the last thing for this drive segment that I want to point out is the manual operation of the transmission. So you can use the flappy pedals. Currently I'm in D, this is fully automatic, but as soon as I flick the flappy pedals, it immediately responds. Now it shifts back to 4th gear, and I can use the flappy pedals. Now it can go into full manual mode, which is this, currently in 7th gear, so it's 7 preset gears it has. Flick down, it immediately responds. going back to 5th gear. When I start accelerating it, it doesn't automatically upshift or downshift, but at constant speed it allows for 500 RPMs plus or minus. And that is done for circumstances where you may be in too high of a gear, so the engine can respond, but it will force you to downshift manually, so it stays in gear. But as said, as soon as I flick the pedal, it immediately responds. So that's very nice to have, especially when you're on curvy mountain roads. There's not another car on sale at this moment that makes this much sense as the Suzuki Swift. From an economical, practical point of view, it ticks all the boxes. The fuel economy, the cost of ownership, the maintenance cost, reliability, everything is just great. I am willing to bet that the new Z12E engine that Suzuki developed for the new Swift will at least last 500,000 kilometers. It's very well engineered, it's overbuilt, over-engineered, and you don't pay a full premium for that. It's just what comes with the car. And fuel economy has proven to be great. Reliability, we know from Suzuki, is great. So from that rational perspective, this car makes very much sense and it's pretty hard to beat. But then there's the emotional aspect, and it showed in the driving segment that it's a real fun to drive car. Handling is second to none, it's superb. Cars that have 10 times the horsepower or cost 10 times as much aren't even close to 10 times as much fun to drive as this car. So if you're looking for a replacement for instance an MX-5 because your family is growing, the Suzuki Swift makes all the sense. It's so much fun to drive. But the question for this real life car review was, how does it compare to the manual transmission? So if you look at the metrics in the brochure, the CVT does everything slightly better in terms of top speed and acceleration, but as soon as you start driving the car you can tell that the difference are much larger than just that. And every possible metric, when you look at the acceleration, this is the better car. Just performs better, it's more effortless, and it's just as much fun to drive, especially when you flick it into manual mode. It's still very engaging. So if you look for the optimal driver car between the manual transmission Swift and the CVT Swift, I think this is the better choice. Only thing is you pay 200 euros extra at least over here in the Netherlands. And you have to keep in mind that fuel economy is slightly worse. As said in the intro, I got 26 kilometers out of a liter of fuel on the manual version, and in this car best I got was 23 kilometers per liter, and that's still very good. During this test drive where I enjoyed myself a little bit, where I pushed the car and just had fun and didn't give the fuel economy much thought, I still got 20.5 kilometers per liter, which still is pretty good. No, it's not as good as the Toyota Yaris, but if you look at the price difference, this is the more sensible option. So yeah, all in all, if you have the money, if you want to keep the car long term, and if you're often in a situation where you are in stop and go traffic and city traffic, yeah, the CVT version makes much more sense, while it still is engaging to drive. Anyway, that's it for this real life car review. I hope you liked following me along, and if you did, let me know by subscribing to my channel, give me a like, and if you have any questions or constructive feedback, let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you want to help out to support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. For that, I'll also leave the link in the description box. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!